So we spoke about attacks, we spoke about motivation. Money is a great motivation. We spoke about means. The industry is innovating and the bad guys are using this innovation. We spoke about the opportunity through IoT in different shapes, and we are now in the protection zone of how could the industry protect itself. And continuing from the place where Mark stopped, we will continue into data and analytics with James Hanlon, the Director of Security Market Specialization, EMEA at Splunk. Welcome, James.
So good morning, everybody. It's an absolute pleasure to be here at Cyber Week. It's very clear that Israel is an innovation center, so to be able to speak to you is an absolute honor. My name is James Hanlon, and I'm the Director for Security Specialization with Splunk, covering Europe, Middle East, and Africa. And I get the opportunity to work with lots of organizations who are building the latest thinking and new techniques when it comes to security operations, but also fraud prevention. For today, I want to do two things. The first thing is I want to share with you our view around what are those trends that are going to be impacting our industry as we move forward in terms of protection. But I also want to share with you two examples. One example in the area of fraud prevention from our own research teams here at Splunk, but also a customer story from a Splunk customer. Many of you would have heard of Splunk as a data analytics platform. However, I've been asked this question many times, and actually at this conference as well. Where does the name Splunk come from? Splunk comes from a term called splunkering, which is the exploration of deep underground caves. And that's exactly what we do here at Splunk. We try and explore machine data with a mission to make machine data usable, accessible, and valuable to absolutely everybody. Over the past 5 years, we've extended that vision to be able to provide some of the latest thinking when it comes to security data analytics, machine learning, and automation for operations and fraud prevention teams. To talk about industry protection and its redefinition, I kind of want to take a slightly wider approach to start with, because we're seeing huge transformation all across the industry. Every organization I speak to wants to be more data-driven under the umbrella of digitalization. We're seeing organizations shift from huge monolithic architectures into agile ecosystems based on APIs. We're also seeing the shift from server to serverless, and organizations who are looking to embrace the cloud, moving to hybrid and multi-cloud strategies. All of this is generating huge amounts of data in everybody's organization. According to IDC, by 2025, there's going to be over 173 zettabytes of data on this planet. To give you some context to that, that's going to be more bytes of data here than there are visible stars within the sky. All of this is driving brand new trends. The first trend we see will be absolutely in analytics. Splunk conducted a survey of over 1,300 business leaders, security leaders, and IT leaders all around the world, and we found some interesting facts. Firstly, 60% of any organization's data is actually unused, untapped, and not providing insights. We call that dark data. Secondly, machine learning is only being impactful for decision-making in 12% of organizations. The second trend we can talk about is that of the platform. Every organization and every business is moving towards a hub economy. We can clearly see that with social media. We can see that with infrastructure. We can see that with customer engagement platforms. And actually, more recently, we can look at the automotive industry, as that makes a shift from purely providing vehicles to being a software and application delivery platform. All of these platform approaches bring benefits. One is an innovation, and one is a life cycle approach as we move forward. These trends will redefine our industry, not just in terms of technology, but in terms of types of roles all of our users have. And that's a really exciting time for everybody here today. However, we're not alone in this innovation. The adversary is a dark mirror image of all that transformation. According to Gartner, by 2022, API abuses will be one of the leading reasons for data breaches. If we look at the changing threat landscape, as some of the earlier presenters talked about, we're seeing increasing complexity. One of the pieces of malware that's really affected many organizations in 2018 and 2019 is something called MOTE. It started its life as a financial Trojan, but very quickly evolved to be a complex malware platform, delivering other forms of malware such as TrickBot and Reiki. Incredible propagation, techniques all across organizations, but also very hard to eradicate. And we have to expect, as we move into the next phase, that machine learning will become a key tool in the adversary's kit bag. So what do we see here at Splunk? Well, we're going to see a lot of innovation in the marketplace, in the realms of analytics, in the realms of security and fraud platforms, but also in terms of new roles for security and fraud defenders. So firstly, when it comes to analytics, we're going to see a mainstream capability around data stream processing. So the ability to look at data in motion, to transform, to join, to evaluate, to correlate, as that data travels. That's going to give us the ability to actually hunt for threats before data is ingested into platforms. We're going to see natural language processing coming more to the fore. This will allow analytics a much wider scope for non-technical users. And we're going to see federated analytics. So when we think about the siloed analytics we see in lots of organizations, we'll be able to connect the dots and actually process billions or trillions of events. All of this needs to be wrapped with prescriptive analytics. We do incredible work in the academic spheres and in our research teams, but we need to make that consumable by everybody. From a fraud platform perspective, some of the benefits we've seen in other industries needs to come into security so we can work in an ecosystem. We believe that you need to operate across the 4 key pillars of security and fraud: investigation, monitoring, analysis and automation, and have the extensibility to quickly bring innovation to the fore. Finally, that's going to result in new roles for all of us. The analytics content developer who will spend their time tuning, tweaking and deploying analytics. Automation engineers that are going to build workflows to help us alleviate ourselves from medial or repetitive tasks. And of course, machine learning analytics and designers. I want to share with you a couple of examples now. This is from our own research teams at Splunk. So as many of you will know, fraudulent activities are often caused by different types of attacks. These can be done with account takeovers, they can be done with credential theft, and they can be done with attacks against online payment processing. But in many of those attacks, people have actually known how to get hold of legitimate credentials. Adversary groups are well aware of some of the detective techniques we use to go and protect ourselves, from looking at threat intelligence to look at devices, IPs, and correlations. So we need to bring a new level of sophistication when looking at those types of attacks. One approach is to use behavioral biometrics. So look at how users engage with a system, with a platform, as they're using it. And this is what the team at Splunk actually did. A great example of that might be when you actually engage with a banking portal and actually see how the users move through that. Our team firstly looked at how could we collect this behavioral biometric data. So we created an algorithm that allows us to capture how users move around web pages, how they use their mouse, how they click on buttons and navigate. One of the first challenges we came across is that this quickly becomes a big data challenge. Huge amounts of data are generated. From a singular web page, you can have 10,000 events. So how do you actually encode, enrich, and translate that information? The team decided to use an encoding algorithm to encode them as high definition, high contrast color images. And then they decided to deploy machine learning. In this case, they used convolutional neural networks as a form of deep learning to help do pattern analysis and spot legitimate users as well as adversaries. The first task around that was trying to spot a regular user, somebody who was familiar with that platform. And they did that, and actually only in over 2 minutes, with over 2,000 data sets and over another 800 to validate them. But they built an 80% confidence in that detection capability. The next more hard challenge was actually looking for individual users. And again, although they had smaller data sets, they extended that neural network and were able to detect with a success rate of 78%. The last point that's absolutely key is how do you operationalize that? So again, here is where you can move forward. Oh, apologies. You can move forward and bring that into an analytics platform so you can compress together new analytics techniques with existing techniques to give you the foresight you need. A different example really focuses on orchestration and automation. Many of you here today will be familiar with McGraw-Hill Education. They're a leader in learning science. And as I'm sure many of you have taken the CISP certification, as I have, you would have had one of their books. Now, McGraw-Hill are really interesting. They're a small but very efficient security operations team. They use the productivity platform of Office 365. They use Splunk as their data analytics platform, Splunk Phantom as their orchestration and automation engine, as well as an EDR capability as their last line of defense on their endpoints. During the summer of 2018, they started to receive increasingly large waves of the mail spam associated with MOTAE. Their detection systems within Office 365 generated huge amounts of alerts, and the challenge they had was to investigate each of those alerts at speed and scale. Very quickly, they were overwhelmed. This is where they deployed automation and orchestration to speed that investigation process. So through those techniques, they were able to extract IOCs from the emails, they were able to detonate malware within sandboxes, and scope the environment with analytics. This allowed them to free up valuable analyst time. However, they still noticed potential malware infections coming through on a particular group of users that were associated with Salesforce. And what they spotted was actually that some of those mail spams were bypassing the Office 365 detections. So what they did is extend that capability and mature the analytics that they had. I wonder if you could switch on, please, to the next part. I'll continue with automation to actually help them move that forward. So what we can see here is a really good example how organizations are making the shift when it comes to innovation in the landscape around automation. If we can move on to the next slide, please. Thank you. So I really want to wrap this conversation up with talking about how new innovation, particularly in data analytics, for fraud, for security, is going to radically change the way we think about how we work in this world. Our view for the future is that security and fraud operations need to be focused on three key things. Firstly, we need to automate over 90% of all Tier 1 analyst workflows. We need to enable our teams to have 50% of their time spent on tuning and deploying analytics logic, and we need to have one platform to orchestrate across the entire ecosystem of solutions we have today. Thank you very much.
So, hi, James. So before you finish, you spoke about a lot of technologies, and can you say something about what are the opportunities that these technologies present themselves to the audience today?
Absolutely, yeah. I think there's a couple of key things that the audience can take away here. We have, at the moment, a shortage of cybersecurity professionals globally. We know this. However, we have some incredible research work going on all across the community. And as we look at the new innovation that we're going to see in the industry, we're going to see new opportunities for more people to come into the industry. We're going to see that in some of the roles we've already talked about, but there's going to be new additional roles be available for people, such as brand defenders, tools engineers, and of course more work around machine learning. The most interesting thing for me, though, is we're going to see a convergence of disciplines as well. So when we talk about security, we're going to see social science, behavioralists now coming into that cross-functional team. So we're going to be able to get much closer together as an industry and learn from each other in that space.
Well, excellent. That seems like still a career lifetime for me, so I could stay many more years in this industry. So thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Pleasure to being with you today.